Reading with your kids.
Hola, ni hao, konnichiwa, assalamu alaikum, shalom, jumbo, bienvenidos. Hi, my name is Jedley, and this is the Reading with Your Kids podcast. I am so excited. Our guest today is a friend of mine coming to us from Nashville in Tennessee. He is a member of Newsboys United, one of the most popular Christian bands in the entire world. He is also a member of Zealand, one of my favorite bands in the whole world. And he is here today to talk to us about his brand new book, Redwoods and Whales. I think you're going to love meeting my friend, Phil Joel. Before Phil joins us, I wanted to share with you a note that I just saw posted on that website, Alignable, where folks can go and rate your business. And I did a program not too long ago at St. Patrick's School right outside of well, it's not right outside of Nashville. It's about an hour or so outside of Nashville. Beautiful little school. I really had a great time there. The principal of the school, Sister Mary Watson, just posted on Alignable this review. Jedley came to our school and gave the most entertaining presentation to our students. We were all engaged and enthralled from the beginning to the end. His show helped every child to feel important and valued. I have to tell you, that is the kind of recommendation that I love. I love when people say, oh, his magic was amazing. He was the most amazing magician in the world. But that statement that Sister Mary said, that my show helped every child feel important and valued. That's why I do my shows, to help kids feel important, empowered, and to remind them that they are loved. I would love to have an opportunity to come and share my show with the kids in your community. Now, you can find out about my shows in two different places. Jedlie.com, Jedlie, Jedlie.com is one place. It's the classic website. And, of course, you can also find out about my show by going to the podcast website, readingwithyourkids.com/live, readingwithyourkids.com/live. One last thing before Phil comes in to talk about Redwoods and Whales. You know, I mentioned during the interview a number of times that I experienced Redwood and Whales through the audiobook, and it's a book that Phil narrates himself, and it is a wonderful, wonderful presentation. If you would like to get a free copy of Redwoods and Whales, you can do so by going to audibletrial.com/respect, audibletrial.com/respect. When you sign up for Audible's free 30-day trial membership, you can download Redwoods and Whales or any one of like over 150,000 different titles. Now, if you cancel at any time during the first 30 days, you owe absolutely nothing, and you get to keep the audio book that you downloaded for free. I'd suggest that you start off with Phil Joel's Redwoods and Whales, and you can do that. Download it free on audibletrial.com/respect. Joining us right now from Nashville in Tennessee. I'm really excited. I love talking to different authors. I especially love talking to authors that I'm friends with. And that is the case right now. This gentleman was actually trapped in my van for a couple of hours one time, and he survived to talk about it. Please welcome to the show the author of the brand new book, Redwoods and Whales, Phil Joel. Phil, how are you?
Yeah, good to be with you, man. Yeah, I'm great. And as for being trapped in your van for 2 hours, that was fun. That went by quick. And obviously I'm a sucker for punishment because I'm back for more, right?
That's right. Yeah, we had a great, we should probably mention, if you don't recognize, his name, Phil is also a, celebrated recording artist, part of, one of the biggest, recording acts in Christian music history, Newsboys and now Newsboys United, and also, the leader of one of my favorite groups right now, Zealand.
Ta-da! That's me.
That's you. Yes. So tell us.
On the front porch today in beautiful Tennessee with the weather feeling lovely, just, before it gets crazy and humid around here. So this is a nice situation.
Yeah. And I have to tell you, I'm really excited about Redwoods and Whales because there are so many reasons I like it, but, as I was reading it, and I made a joke on my review on Audible, it felt just like the author was sitting in the van next to me talking, because that's it's a really accessible book. It's really comfortable. It's like having a conversation with you.
Good. Yeah, that's been that's been pretty common sort of feedback right now, which I hope is a good thing, because I like to have a little chat, from time to time. And so, yeah, if that's how it feels like we're just having a conversation, then good. I think conversation is a whole lot more interesting than just information, right? So
absolutely. And that's what this podcast is all about, reading with your kids. That's, reading and the information that you're reading and sharing together with your kids. That's important, but that's just the starting point. It's the launch point for that conversation that you have with your kids about what you're reading, and that leads into a lifelong conversation with your kids about all sorts of things. And Redwoods and Whales, I think it's the perfect book to experience with your kids because, like I said, it's very accessible for kids. And I don't want people to read into that it's a simple book. I mean, it's simple in that it's accessible and it's very easy for kids to kind of relate to. And I think it's very easy for parents and kids to experience together.
Good.
Yeah.
Well, that's great. I mean, it's, I wrote it for students, primarily sort of high school and college students to begin with. And it seems like everybody's picked it up, Yeah. Every man and his dog, as you can hear my dog in the background there just barking at somebody strolling past. Yeah. I love the idea of people reading books together. I have dear friends that we'll read stuff together and, be in different parts of the country and compare notes. Mm-hmm. And that's fun. And it's super fun when you do that with your family, with your kids, especially when they get to an age when they can, when it's more than just, kids books. My son is 15. My daughter is 18. And, we love comparing notes on what we're reading, and if we can read the same thing together, that's even cooler. So hopefully this will be, a good vehicle for that type of thing.
Yeah, absolutely. And, I love the book kind of starts off with these two images, the redwoods and whales, and kind of tell us a little bit about that so we can jump into, more of the meat of the book.
Right. Well, I didn't really set about to write a book. I don't have a bucket list and so writing a book wasn't on it. But, I was out in Northern California and, we had some shows in the San Francisco area and we had a couple of days off. And so I got in a rental car and headed across the Golden Gate Bridge, basically turned left and headed up the one there and headed to a place called Bodega Bay, which I love. I love this little town. It reminds me a lot of New Zealand. And later that night, I was taking a stroll on the beach about 11 o'clock, and it was pretty dark. And I went to walk around a whole bunch of rocks. And instead of this being rocks, which, often up in that part of the world, you do have to navigate your way around the beach, because there's sticks and all kinds of stuff. Instead of this being rocks, I realized as I went to walk around it, this was actually, in fact, a whale. Mm-hmm. This was not a pile of rocks. And, that doesn't happen too often. It doesn't happen to me, at least, too often. So I was really taken aback with this beautiful big whale that had died there on the beach. And something kind of got me in that moment. I was disturbed by it, and I don't get disturbed by roadkill. I'm not that green, although I'm pretty green, but, with stuff. There was something in this. And as it turns out, these whales, they migrate from Alaska down to Mexico. And as they do, especially the younger ones, and this whale was a teenage whale, apparently. So especially the younger ones, as they're heading down the coast there, they can get distracted. Something can catch their eye and they'll head off to follow this, whatever it is, and they will end up getting lost. They'll get disoriented and lose their way and get confused and end up on the beach and breathing shallow and dying slowly. Mm-hmm. And to me that was just this really powerful yet tragic metaphor for how so many people, find themselves in life. And it doesn't take too long. We find a lot of kids, a lot of teenagers in this space where they're just confused. They're off course. They don't know where they're going. They don't know where they're headed. And they don't know what's happened. And, so that was this one sort of metaphor in that moment that I felt. And then I headed up the next day up the coast to and I had to come inland at some point. I had to go back, And so I turned on this road that ran alongside a river. And as I did, it wasn't too long before I was just canopied and enveloped in shade, and in the shade of these beautiful redwood trees. So I was in the redwoods, and these things are beautiful, and they're magnificent. They're breathtaking. I don't use the word awesome too often, but they are awesome. They're just awe-inspiring. And this picture was correct. This whole thing felt right. These trees with their roots running deep, drinking from that river that ran alongside the road, and they're growing together, and they're growing tall and straight, and they're providing shade for me in my rental car. It was just this perfect scene of this is how it's meant to be. Mm-hmm. And for me, it resonated in a biblical kind of way. We read in the Psalm 1, right in the heart of the Bible there, talking about our lives and as people drinking deep of God's goodness. And then later on in the Bible in Jeremiah, we read also about the man who trusts in the Lord, whose hope is in him. He'll be like a tree planted by the river with his roots running deep. And when the heat comes, he won't be afraid, but rather he'll get greener and he'll bear fruit. And so that's God's vision for our lives, for all of us, every life on the planet. He wants us to drink in the goodness of who he is, and feed on his faithfulness, because he's good and he's trustworthy, and our lives will get greener and we will bear fruit being love and joy and peace and all that good stuff. So that was the metaphor, 2 metaphors that I began to write this book based upon. And I didn't really mean to write a book. I just felt to write that story down, that experience, and then I just kept going, Jed, and I just connected the dots, but I ended up writing a book. So yeah.
Well, we're awfully glad that you wrote a book, and those are really powerful images, especially to get, one day after another. And
right.
As you were talking about the whale being distracted, and yeah, I agree. There's so many kids are distracted these days, and there's so much to and not only kids, but there's so much to distract us.
Oh yeah.
Where you and I are speaking through the magic of technology. And it is magical, but it can be kind of dangerous too, I think.
Yeah, it can. It can be. I mean, you're right. We live in this really wild day and age, which is it's incredible. I love being alive in this exciting time where all sorts of new things are coming, into the foray, and all kinds of new technologies. But often these things can, if we're not careful, they can turn around and bite us, and They pose as friends at different points and promise certain things, and then after a while we realize they're taking more than they're giving. And for me, I in the book I take a look at the social media issue in our time. I mean, it's pretty amazing. I can post photographs of my kids and my backyard chickens, and my relatives in New Zealand can see them. If I wanted to, if I was actually an active social media person, which, it's amazing stuff, right? Years gone by, obviously I have to stick photographs, develop photographs down at the chemist or the pharmacy, and, stick them in envelopes and send them, it would take 2 weeks,
Sure.
So yes, amazing things going on, but, and we're more connected than ever in some ways, but then we're also more lonely than ever. This next generation coming through is the most medicated and depressed and suicidal bunch we've ever seen. Mm-hmm. And so we've got to put some of these things that we're all involving ourselves in under the microscope and sort of say, hey, is this worth my time? Is this taking more than it's giving? Is this promising a lot but actually taking more out of me than I'm getting? What do we need to do? Mm-hmm. And as parents, as an older generation, we need to help this next generation coming through. We need to help them be courageous in certain, some of them need to not just back away from it a little bit and curb their use. Some people really just need to trash certain things. Need to just be brave enough to go, you know what? I don't need that app. I don't need that activity in my life. Mm-hmm. I need to get rid of it. Mm-hmm. And, because it's trashing me. So maybe it's time for me to trash it. So yeah. I sort of, I throw some of those things out there and in order to hopefully jolt some people into, really putting some of the ways they're spending their time and energy under the microscope. Just throw it under the microscope, take a look, and see if it's really something we need to be doing.
Well, I absolutely agree. As you were talking about, us being more connected than ever, one of the things that came to my mind is that we have these connections with hundreds or thousands of people through technology, but very rarely do we have a time to sit down and have a 2-hour conversation, as you and I have had on a couple of occasions.
Yeah.
And those are so valuable. And I think there's a lot of kids out there who've never experienced that.
Yeah, totally. I mean, we've talked about all kinds of things. And for those people out there that don't know, I'm a Jesus follower. I love the words of Jesus. I'm doing my best to walk in his ways and his footsteps and figure things out. And one of the things that he said 2,000 years ago, which is deeply profound and very meaningful today, is, what good is it if a man gains the whole world but loses his soul? Mm-hmm. And I think that can mean a lot of things. But one of those things I think it means is, we can collect all kinds of followers and all kinds of people to sort of gathering around us. Look at me. Look what I'm doing. Here I am, in this pose, looking good here, doing this. And we can feel for a moment like we are connected, but in actuality we're not, and we're actually losing our souls. Mm-hmm. We're drying up inside. We're breathing shallow, and we're really unsure, even though so many people present a very sure-footed sort of image online. This is how great my life is. Everything's going great and everyone's looking at them. But honestly, they're breathing shallow, mm-hmm. and they're not sure about where they're going, and their soul is falling apart because they're not having true relational, connections. They're not truly connecting with other human beings, because when we connect with other people, and especially when we connect with God, that's where the life is. Mm-hmm. And if we're not, if we're busy, passing out little fragments of ourselves that aren't even real, we're going to lose ourselves pretty quick. And so we have to help our kids understand this, without necessarily getting into deep, whatever theology or whatever, but help them understand some of the things they're feeling. And because I guess our feelings are obviously indicators of what we're buying into, what we're thinking, what we're believing. If we're believing the wrong things, and we're acting out in the wrong ways, then we have to take a look at those things and help this next generation understand what's happening to them. But first and foremost, as parents and as adults, we need to understand what's happening to us, mm-hmm. because a lot of people, in our generation, Jedi, breathing just as shallow as the next generation coming through. So
yeah, absolutely. And one of the things, you talk about theology, and one of the things you go through, that you mentioned a number of times in the book, is, hey, if you're not a God guy, I'm not quoting you, but don't be preaching, but just hang with me for a minute. And the theology that is expressed in the book so clearly, and I think it's the most important theology, is that God loves you.
Right.
The chapter in the book that was especially meaningful to me a number of different occasions was, and because I listened to it again and again, was chapter 8, where you talk about that in reminding us it doesn't matter. Well, you tell us better than me, but just talking about the fact that we're not mistakes.
Right. We're not mistakes. I mean, as you've read the book there, you've discovered, unless we've talked about it before, which we may have, I'm an adopted kid, mm-hmm. and grew up in a fantastic family. But there's also, being an adopted kid, somehow there's often a sort of an underlying feeling of, I'm not really meant to be here. I don't really belong. I kind of just happened by mistake. I'm really happy that my life is what it is, and I'm glad I'm here. But it's just I just made it somehow, by the skin of my teeth. Here I am. But so you have this underlying sort of feeling, and at least when you're adopted, you're kind of aware of that, because you're like, not by circumstances due to my own hand or my own, but I I made it to Earth, but it was not the regular sort of way, I guess. You know what I'm saying?
Yep.
So it's kind of right there and identified. Well, obviously I'm not going to feel connected as much as some others, but it's not just a adopted kid phenomena. It's not just a kid in the foster care phenomena. I think so many of us just feel like we don't belong, feel like we're not really meant to be here. We don't really have a purpose. We're just a bunch of sort of cells just bumbling around on this planet, and we're not even sure, we're not sure if we're meant to be here and if we have a purpose greater than just eating, sleeping, and watching TV or whatever,
Mm-hmm.
But the reality is God is real. We've got to get that locked and loaded. God is real. God is good. God knows who we are because he created us. We're not mistakes. He knit us together, fashioned our hearts, and knows exactly who we are, knows what makes us tick, and he really, really likes us. There's those three things we have to get locked and loaded in our heads. And it's easier said than done, I think, sometimes, but the truth is the truth. And so the truth isn't afraid of our questions. We can ask, what am I doing here? Am I meant to be here? The answers are there. And as we cry out to God, he will show us. He will answer us, and he'll speak and show us that we are actually loved, that he does see us, and that he does get us. That's kind of one of the core messages in the book, honestly, that we are seen, that we are understood, and we are loved by God. Because if we don't understand that and we don't dwell on that and allow that to just sort of really permeate into our souls, then we're going to look for that from other places. And this, I'll say this next generation, but I'm saying I think it's all of us.
Sure.
We're all looking to be seen and to be understood and to be liked. And that's what social media promises, Hey, here I am. Look at me. Look what I'm doing. Do you like it? Do you get it? Can you give me a good thumbs up? Can you give me a 5-star rating? So unless we get the good stuff from God, we're going to try and get it from other places, and those other places will just leave us breathing shallow,
That whole desire to be seen is something that is really, I've become very aware of it in the last couple of years. My wife and I run a ministry to a homeless shelter, and it's very simple. We serve desserts on Friday nights, and we have a team of folks from our parish, and we take turns. And the guests at the shelter, and it's one of those shelters of last resort. These guys have been invited out of every other shelter in the city, and this is the last one. And it's a pretty dreary place. There's 200 or 300 guys in there, in all different circumstances.
Yeah.
And they love the cakes and the cookies that the parishioners bake, and they love the ice cream that we serve. But what they love most of all is when we look up and we look in their eyes and we say, "Hey, nice to see you. What can we give you?" And we smile and we tell them to have a nice day. And it seems, someone listening to that might just think, "Oh, that's just a lot of hokey," but it's true.
Mm-hmm. Totally true. That's in us. Mm-hmm. We want to be. We kind of need to be seen. I mean, we were created to be on this planet, and to be aware of others, and for others to be aware of who we are. And it's fine. It's totally fine to, because it's in us to desire to be seen. And we know it when someone says our names. Said, "Jed, hey," what, from across the crowd, someone calls out your name, "Jed, how you doing?" Mm-hmm. You'd be like, "Hey, yeah." There's something in us. It's good. We're connecting. We're resonating as, human beings. But the greatest need for us is honestly for us to understand that God sees us. Mm-hmm. If we can settle that and get settled in it, and it's a lifetime discovery, I think, of settling into the fact that God is very, very real and very present and sees us and is very involved and wants us to acknowledge him in all our ways. That settles a lot of stuff, I wish that was a little more of our focus a lot of the time, because I think, even people who are believers and faith, oriented people run around still looking to be seen, look at me, and, it's something we don't necessarily grow out of. Yep. It just changes. That form just changes. But we're meant to grow into a relationship with God that is real. And so anyway, this is all stuff that's in the book. And I hope that it all comes through with kindness, because I know we're talking about, some of the crazy stuff that social media promises, or how maybe it doesn't deliver and maybe doesn't meet our needs and whatnot. But I hope the book doesn't come across as any sort of a fist shaking thing. I want the kindness of God to sort of permeate the pages, because that's what's changed me over the years, and that's what will continue to.
Well, quite the contrary. And one of the things I wanted to talk about is, I think a lot of it's so important. And one of the most beautiful things about your book is reminding people that, yes, God sees us and God loves us. Mm-hmm. But I think a lot of times people who kind of understand that, feel bad because they think all God sees is me messing up down here. And God sees how I'm failing. And God sees how I'm making mistakes and hurting other people. And so God he sees me and he knows I'm lousy and he doesn't love me.
Yeah, well, my kids make mistakes too, and they mess up, and I hope that they will always know that I just think they're great. They are great, and I never want them to hide in shadows and secrets and shame, cowering away from me, because I'm going to miss out on them, and they're going to miss out on me. And something I think is, I don't know where I heard it or how I arrived at this, but it's been pretty profound for me. I don't think God gets so much mad or angry at us as much as he gets angry for us. Mm-hmm. I think he's like, guys, what are you doing? Phil, what are you doing? That's not going to lead to life. That's going to push people away, or that's going to make you hide, or that's not going to make you, healthier and stronger. And that's not going to help you exercise your gifts or help you love people well or serve. What you're doing right there is selfish. It's about you. Or what you're doing right there is, it's really a distortion of the truth, and you're just ripping yourself off. You're getting a counterfeit, version of something I have in store for you that's better. And I think it makes God angry, not at us so much as like, I'm going to tear my hair out. This kid's not listening to me, and I have good things for him. So, I think our perspective, if we believe the wrong things, about God, if we think he's really up there just with the scorebook, writing on one side, about the bad stuff, and writing on another side the good stuff that we do, and trying to balance the books, deciding whether or not he's going to like us, love us, or hate us somehow, then we're messed up. We're going to behave in messed up kind of ways. We're going to try and perform our way into a better relationship with God, and that's going to cause us to breathe shallow. Or we're just going to go, forget it, and we're just going to do whatever it is our heart desires and try and make ourselves feel better, or try and medicate ourselves out, Mm-hmm. And neither of those things are going to lead us to life if we've seen God the wrong way, And I think kids, Jesus talked about this. Kids kind of get it, They get it, and Jesus even said, unless you come to me as a child, you can't enter the kingdom of God. Be like a kid, young kids especially. They trust, and when they hurt themselves, they lift their hands up and say, hey, daddy, up, give me a hug. Mm-hmm. And they know that their parents are going to provide for them, and they know that their parents are there to love on them. And obviously some kids don't grow up with that, and that's an even deeper struggle. But at some point along the line, as we grow up, the parental sort of image of God begins to change, and we begin to see a good parental image of God begins to change, and we begin to see God as just some mean taskmaster, right. And we have to take a look at that. What did I let in? Did I let in some kind of lie or some kind of really heavy-handed religious garbage come into my life that has squashed my view of God and has put a squeeze on the goodness of God in my life, because when I was a kid, there was a wide-eyed awe and wonder about God, and I knew somehow in my heart that He was good. But somehow that got squashed, so, that sort of stuff is in the book there too, to make sure that kids kind of grow up, or all of us, just get back to the simple understanding that God is good. He's for us. He's not angry at us, waving a stick, waiting for us to mess up, or waiting for us to be good boys and girls. He's a dad that loves his kids, and it's His kindness that makes us turn. If we go in the wrong direction, we want God's kindness to be the driving motivator. And so hopefully this book has, extends that and His kindness toward us.
Absolutely. As I'm reading in the book and listening to you now, I'm reminded that what something Father Greg Boyle, the author of Tattoos on the Heart, shared with me is that oftentimes we create God in our image. And we're not able to see the real God, the loving, all-loving God.
Yes. Yeah. Smart man, that Father Greg. He's onto it. Yeah, we do. I think if we've grown up in really harsh sort of religious situations, sometimes we need to get a little distance on that and really cry out to God and say, hey God, what do you really like? And then open our ears and our hearts, because He will speak. He's not silent. He will show us who He is. But it takes us opening our senses to the one true God, and the one true God is good. He's for us, not against us, and wants us to embrace Him, wants us to welcome Him in and walk with Him in His ways, and His ways lead to life. And He does speak, and He does lead, and He does guide, and He does provide for his kids, like any good dad would, and if our picture of God is anything other than that, then we've been tricked. And if we have been tricked, and if we've got this wrong idea of who God is, then we're going to behave in ways that won't lead to life and will leave us breathing shallow. And so, sometimes we just need to stop, take a little break and go, hang on, let me take stock of things. Let's really put our life under the microscope and our thinking and our behavior. What are we doing? How are we doing? Do we feel like we're lost? Do we feel like we're disoriented? Or are we in the flow of where we're meant to be going as human beings, as people? And, hopefully the book will do that in a nice way. Help us get it all out on the table and go, all right, let's take a look at some of this stuff. Absolutely. Who am I becoming? And how am I living? And what am I believing?
Yes. Absolutely.
Simple. It's simple stuff, Jed, it's not rocket science.
Well, and that's the beauty of the book. And, like I said at the beginning, I think Redwoods and Whales, it's a beautiful book for adults. It's a beautiful book for kids. It's a beautiful book for families to experience together. I experienced the audio version, and Phil narrated that. And the cool thing about the narration is, and I really love this, every once in a while there's a book that's narrated by the author, and the author laughs at his own jokes in the books. And that's what you do. And I love that. Because like I said, it makes you feel like you're sitting in the van next to me.
That's funny. I guess I did. I didn't even notice that. But well, I'm glad they left those little things in there. That's kind of.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, tell us. The book is available. I obviously downloaded it from Audible. Where else is it available?
Pretty much everywhere. The first day it came out, I sneaked into Barnes and Noble and Nobles and grabbed a copy and took it up and paid my pulled out my debit card, and luckily the lady, she didn't turn it over and see my picture on the back, so she didn't make the connection. But yeah, Barnes and Noble and Amazon and all of those good places. I know Christian bookstores have it. So it's out and about.
Excellent.
It shouldn't be too hard to find.
Excellent. And while we're here, if you're interested in the Newsboys, there's a bazillion different places to find out about the Newsboys, and Newsboys are United, and they're awesome. But I'm really excited. Zealand is pretty amazing. Where can folks find out more about Zealand?
Well, thank you. Phil Joel Official will kind of direct your path a little bit, So if you can remember my name, Phil Joel Official, it will give you some options. You can find out a little about what's going on with Zealand and the Newsboys, and then obviously with the book, and yeah.
Awesome.
A little bit.
And if you're in the New England area on June 1st, and you want to meet me, and more importantly, if you want to hear Zealand, they're going to be playing in Auburn, Massachusetts on June 1st. So check them out, and also check out Redwoods and Whales. We've been talking to the author today, my buddy, Phil Joel. Phil, thanks so much for being on the show.
Jed, thanks, man. Thanks for having me, and thanks for caring. There's so many beautiful people out there that they just need the odd, word of encouragement. And our lives change in moments, don't they? So, I just hope that this podcast and the work that you do continues, because it's really valuable, man. I really appreciate what you do.
Please be sure to join us for the next edition of the Reading with Your Kids podcast. We'll be traveling to the beautiful island of Guam to speak to Jennifer Sinney. Jennifer Sinney, the author of Good Morning Mirror. If you are the author of a great children's book, we would love to have you on the podcast. And being a guest, it's fun. It's easy. You don't have to be locked in a van with me for 2 hours like Phil was to be a guest on the podcast. It's really, really fun, and it's really easy. It gives you a chance to tell the world about your great book. And check it out. It doesn't cost you a thing. All you need to do is to go to our website, readingwithyourkids.com, click on the contact button, let us know about your great book. We'll let you know the next easy steps. readingwithyourkids.com. Want to thank Phil Joel for being here today. Be sure to check out Redwoods and Whales. Also check out his music with Zealand. And again, if you want to download a free audio version of Redwoods and Whales, you can do so by going to audibletrial.com/respect. That way you can support the podcast. Try Audible's free 30-day trial membership. If you don't like the membership, cancel anytime during the first 30 days. You owe absolutely nothing, and you get to keep Redwoods and Whales for free forever. I also want to thank my amazing producer, Fatima Khan, for all that she does for the podcast. And, of course, most of all, we want to thank you. Thank you so much for taking the time to join us today. Thank you so much for taking the time to remind your child that they are special and beautiful in your eyes. And one of the best ways to do that is by sitting down and reading with your kids. I'll be looking for you in the next edition of the Reading with Your Kids podcast.